Emma wasn't planning to ruin her life tonight. She only wanted to ruin her ex's evening. The rooftop glittered above New York City like a diamond on a glass skyline. Music pulsed through the warm autumn air, soft enough to invite conversation, but loud enough to drown out the thoughts she didn't want to hear. Emma held her champagne glass like a shield, the golden bubbles catching the light from the chandelier that hung suspended over the open terrace. She told herself she'd come here to celebrate her new job at Sterling Creative, one of the city's top advertising agencies. She told herself she was happy. She told herself a lot of things she didn't quite believe, and then she saw him. Jake. 3 years of her life, gone with the single word he'd used to end it. Sorry. And there he was, standing near the glass railing, laughing, his hand resting on the hip of the woman he'd left Emma for. The woman was everything Emma wasn't. Blonde, flawless, 22, and dressed in a sequined dress that sparkled loud enough to demand attention. The kind of girl who didn't have to try to be seen. Emma's stomach twisted, not with jealousy, she told herself firmly, but with the sheer nerve of it. Of him, showing up here at this party on her night. She wanted to walk over there and throw her champagne in his smug face. Or maybe walk out gracefully, as if none of it mattered. But neither option felt right. She wanted something that would sting, something he wouldn't forget. That's when she saw him, the stranger. He stood at the bar alone, scrolling through his phone, a quiet figure against the chaos of the crowd. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, his navy dress shirt perfectly fitted but unpretentious. There was something about him that didn't belong here. Something grounded, like the calm in the middle of a storm. Emma's heart pounded as a reckless thought formed in her mind. Before she could question it, before she could talk herself down, she set her glass on a nearby table and walked toward him. Each step felt like a decision she couldn't take back. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. He looked up, eyes a piercing blue-green, curious and amused. "Yes?" She could smell his cologne, woodsy, clean, dangerous. "I need a favor," she said, one eyebrow lifted. "That sounds intriguing. See that guy over there?" She gestured toward Jake, who was still playing Prince Charming to his new girlfriend. "He's my ex. I need him to think I've moved on." The stranger's gaze followed her hand, taking in the scene with one glance. When he looked back at her, his lips curved in a small, knowing smile. "Ah, revenge by illusion. Classic." Emma crossed her arms. "So, will you help me?" He put down his drink, slowly. "Depends. What exactly do you need me to do?" Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Kiss me." For a moment he just looked at her, as if trying to decide whether she was joking. Then he leaned closer, voice low enough to make her breath hitch. "Do you want just a quick peck, or something that will really sell it?" Her throat went dry. "Something that'll sell it." He smiled, slow and dangerous. "Then let's give them a show." Before she could prepare herself, his hand was on her waist, steady, warm, commanding. The other brushed her cheek, tilting her face toward his. His touch sent shivers racing down her spine. The air around them thickened, the noise of the party fading into a dull hum. And then he kissed her. Not a polite kiss, not a staged kiss, a real one, deep and deliberate, filled with heat and unspoken things. The world fell away. There was only the taste of whiskey and the feel of his mouth on hers, the press of his body, the thrill that made her forget her name. For one, dizzying. Second, she didn't care about Jake or the crowd or the consequences. When he finally pulled back, both of them were breathless. Did it work? His voice was rough, teasing. Emma blinked, dazed. She turned to glance at Jake. Jaw dropped, girlfriend forgotten, watching in stunned disbelief. "Perfectly," she breathed. "Good," the stranger said, that crooked smile still playing on his lips. "I'm glad I could be of service. "Thank you," she managed, trying to gather what little dignity she had left. "You're welcome." He straightened, eyes glinting under the soft lights. "Though next time, maybe start with a name before the kiss?" "Emma," she said automatically. "Lucas," he replied, extending his hand like this was a business meeting instead of the aftermath of the most reckless thing she'd ever done. They shook hands. A current ran between them, subtle but undeniable. "Well," he said, still smiling, "that was interesting." She nodded, heart still racing. "Yeah, interesting." She turned to leave before she could embarrass herself further. The crowd swallowed her up, the music returning to its full volume, the night spinning on as if nothing had happened. But as the elevator doors closed behind her, Emma could still feel the ghost of his lips on hers, still hear his voice in her ear. When their lips parted, she thought she'd never see him again. She was wrong. Emma woke up the next morning with a headache that wasn't from wine, but from memories. She couldn't stop replaying the kiss, the stranger's hands, the way time had stopped on that rooftop every time she closed her eyes. She saw his blue-green eyes and that dangerous half-smile. She groaned into her pillow and told herself to forget it. It was just one night, one mistake, one impulsive decision that no one would ever know about. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. The day she had been waiting for had finally arrived, her first day at Sterling Creative, the agency she had dreamed of working for since college. Her hands trembled as she buttoned her blazer, trying to shake off the strange feeling that the universe was planning something she wasn't ready for. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You are going to be brilliant, confident, professional. No distractions, and definitely no mysterious strangers." The Sterling Creative Building stood tall and shining in Midtown Manhattan, a fortress of glass, steel, and ambition. She stepped through the revolving doors, her heart pounding, her future waiting behind every hallway. The receptionist smiled. At her welcome, "Emma Sullivan, Mr. Bennett will be conducting your orientation. You can go right in conference room B." She froze for half a heartbeat. "Mr. Bennett!" The name sent a faint chill down her spine, but she pushed it aside. Probably some older executive, nothing to worry about. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she walked down the hall, lined with posters of award-winning campaigns. Her confidence started to build again until she opened the door and saw him, the stranger from last night, sitting at the head of the table, coffee cup in hand, suit, perfectly tailored eyes, unmistakably the same deep blue-green Lucas Bennett. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Lucas's hand stopped mid-air as he set his cup down, his gaze locking onto hers. A flicker of shock, followed by amusement, passed through his expression. Emma's mouth went dry. Her pulse roared in her ears. He leaned back in his chair, eyes studying her like she was an unexpected plot twist in his day. "So," he said finally, "this is going to be interesting." Emma forced herself to speak, pretending she wasn't about to faint. "Mr. Bennett, I can explain." He raised a brow. "Can you? I'd love to hear how you explain kissing your new boss at a rooftop party." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "It was an accident," she blurted. "I mean, I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just someone who looked good, standing alone." "That's reassuring," Lucas said dryly. "You make impulsive decisions based on lighting and symmetry. Good to know." She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her right there. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, determined to salvage her dignity. "Well, Mr. Bennett, I assure you it won't happen again." "No, I imagine not," he said, his tone teasing, but his eyes unreadable. Then, after a pause, he added, "Take a seat. Miss Sullivan, let's start fresh." Emma sat down, her hands clasped tightly on her lap as Lucas opened her file, his voice calm, professional, as if nothing had happened. He went through her. "Old credentials, degree in advertising, honors from Columbia, portfolio impressive. Clearly you're talented enough to be here." His tone softened, and that compliment hit her harder than it should have. "Thank you," she said, trying to sound steady. He smiled. Faintly, we value passion here, passion and control. Two things that don't always mix well, do they? She met his gaze, and the air between them grew heavy again. Neither of them spoke, but both remembered. The next few hours passed in a blur. Lucas led her through the office, introducing her to team members who all seemed oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. He explained the company's vision, their biggest clients, the creative expectations every time he brushed past her. She could feel the ghost of his touch from last night. It was torture disguised as professionalism by the time he showed her to her small but bright corner office. Her nerves were shot. "This is your space," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You'll find your first assignment on the Desk Horizon Cafe rebranding." Emma nodded. "Thanks, Mr. Bennett." He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Call me Lucas." When it's just us, her heart skipped a beat. "That might not be a good idea," he said quietly. Then his voice dropped low. "Neither was kissing your boss on your first day, and yet here we are." Before she could answer, someone called his name from down the hall. Lucas straightened back into perfect professionalism. "See you at the staff meeting at 3 Sullivan," he said, then walked away, leaving her standing there, half breathless, half terrified, wondering how she was supposed to survive working with a man who could make her world stop with one look. As the door closed behind him, Emma let out a shaky laugh. What were the odds, out of all the men in New York, she had kissed him, the one man she could never have? She stared out the window at the skyline below and whispered to herself, "Forget it. Keep it professional." But deep down, she already knew she wouldn't. When fate had plans for you, there was no such thing as coincidence. The week dragged by with an unbearable mix of tension and confusion. Every morning, Emma promised herself she would be calm, professional, unshakable, and every morning that promise shattered the moment Lucas walked into a room. He had that quiet command, the kind that made people stop talking without being told. His presence filled every corner, his voice smooth and confident, his ideas brilliant and sharp. She hated how much she admired him, and worse, how much she noticed him. His sleeves rolled up during brainstorming sessions, the way his laugh rumbled low when a client said something absurd, the faint scar above his eyebrow. She kept catching herself watching him, and she knew he noticed. To be Friday, the entire office buzzed about the Horizon Cafe pitch. Lucas wanted something different, something that broke the predictable mold. He called an early morning meeting, and the entire team gathered in the glass-walled conference room. Everyone spoke rapid fire, throwing out slogans, color palettes, concepts. But Lucas sat silent, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes flicking between each speaker until finally his gaze landed on Emma. "You've been quiet, Sullivan," he said. "What do you think?" Every head turned toward her. She felt her pulse climb. Her brain screamed, "Stay small, blend in." But something in his tone pushed her to speak. "I think we're overthinking it," she said softly. "The client wants to attract young professionals, but that's not really the market anymore. The real need isn't caffeine, it's connection. People come to cafes to feel human again, to escape screens, to talk to someone even if it's just the barista." Lucas's eyes sharpened, interested. "Go on. What if Horizon Cafe became the place where conversations happen? Instead of selling coffee, we sell connection." A pause filled the room. Then Lucas smiled. Slow and deliberate. "That's exactly the kind of insight we need." When the meeting ended, the team buzzed with energy. Lucas gave her a nod of approval as he left the room, and her chest felt like it might burst. She tried to hide her smile, but Maya, her co-worker and new friend, caught it immediately. "You've got him hooked," Maya whispered as they walked back to their desks. "Hooked professionally?" Emma hissed, but Mia just laughed. "Sure, professionally." That afternoon, Lucas stopped by her desk without warning. He dropped a folder in front of her new project for Monday. He said, voice calm, but his eyes lingered a second too long. She looked up, trying to match his tone. "Anything specific you want me to focus on?" Surprise me, he replied, then walked away, leaving her heart in chaos as evening fell. The office emptied out one by one until only the hum of computers and the city lights remained. Emma stayed behind, sketching ideas for the Horizon campaign. She was lost in her work when she felt a shift in the air, a quiet presence behind her. Lucas. She didn't have to turn to know, burning the midnight oil already. He said, his voice softer now, less boss, more man. She forced a laugh. I just want to make a good impression. You already have, Emma, he said quietly. She froze at the sound of her name on his tongue. Something electric sparked in the air between them. She turned slowly, finding him standing close, tie-loosened sleeves, rolled up, that same look from the rooftop in his eyes. I meant what I said earlier, he continued. You have instincts that most people spend years trying to develop. I see it when you talk about ideas, when you forget you're supposed to hold back. His gaze lingered, and she could feel the weight of every unspoken word between them. Thank you, she whispered. I don't take praise lightly. I know, he said. And that's why I meant it. For a moment, neither of them moved, the tension thick enough to taste. Then Lucas stepped closer, placing a file gently on her desk. Horizon Cafe strategy notes. Take them home, read them, but don't work too late. You deserve rest. He smiled faintly, then added, and next time you decide to surprise me, try not to do it by kissing your boss first. Emma's breath caught her pulse. Spiked, he was teasing, but there was something darker behind his tone, something that hinted at memory. Desire, maybe regret, before she could respond. He turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving her trembling in her chair. She stared after him, heart pounding, wondering if that spark between them was real or if she had imagined the whole thing outside. Thunder rumbled faintly over the skyline, and the rain began to fall against the windows. Soft, steady, relentless New York shimmered below. Lights flickering like a heartbeat. The city never slept, and neither would Emma, not that night. Not after realizing that no matter how hard she tried, she could no longer separate the man she worked for from the man who had kissed her like the world had stopped. That kiss was supposed to be a mistake, but it was starting to feel like fate, and fate, she was beginning to learn, never made mistakes. The rain didn't stop for 2 days, and somehow it matched everything. Emma felt inside, restless, uncertain, and electric. She told herself she was overthinking it. Lucas was just her boss. He complimented her work because she was good at it. That was all. But then, why did his voice echo in her dreams? Why did her pulse race whenever he walked into a room? Monday morning came grey and heavy, and she forced herself to focus on the Horizon Cafe pitch. She was ready for another ordinary day, until Lucas appeared at her office door, looking like he hadn't slept either. We have a problem, he said. The client wants the final proposal early, and half the creative files are corrupted. We need to rebuild the presentation tonight. Her heart skipped. Tonight, yes, he replied. Everyone else is out of town for the other campaign, so it's just you and me. We'll work here until it's done by sunset. The office was silent, except for the sound of rain against the glass. Lucas rolled up his sleeves again, and Emma tried not to stare as he paced the room, muttering ideas. She sat across from him, surrounded by sketches and storyboards. Every so often their eyes met, and the air between them felt too charged to breathe. Hours passed, they argued, they laughed, they built something brilliant together. Lucas was demanding but patient, sharp but kind every time. She lost confidence. He reminded her why she had been hired. When she doubted a concept, he challenged her to push further. It felt less like work and more like creation, pure and alive. When they finally finished the presentation, the city lights had dimmed into a soft golden hazy. Emma leaned back, exhausted, smiling. It's done, she whispered. Lucas smiled too, that rare crooked smile that made her heart ache. You're good at this, he said. You make chaos look like inspiration. She laughed tiredly. You're not so bad yourself. He leaned on her desk, looking at the screen, his voice quiet. You know, this company almost broke me a few years ago. I lost people, I trusted people who used me for their own gain. Since then, I've kept my walls high, Emma. Listened, her chest tightening. She could hear something raw beneath his calm tone. What happened? Someone I loved betrayed me, he said flatly. I built this empire to prove I didn't need anyone, and maybe I was wrong. The confession hung between them. Like fragile glass, she wanted to reach out to him, but stopped afraid of what that would mean. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "You make me forget why I built those walls." Emma. His voice was low, careful, like he was afraid to scare her away. Her breath caught Lucas. "This isn't smart," she said. "We both know that." He nodded. "You're right." But his eyes didn't move from hers. A distant crack of thunder filled the silence. He stepped closer. She felt the warmth of his breath, his cologne mixing with the scent of coffee and rain. He stopped just inches away, his hand resting lightly on her desk. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. "I'm not," she said, but her voice trembled. He smiled faintly. "Good, because I am for the first time in a long time I am." Then he reached up, brushed a stray hair from her face, and the world seemed to vanish. She could hear only her heartbeat. She didn't remember leaning in. She only remembered the way it felt when their lips met. Again, this time slower, deeper, not a mistake, not revenge, but something real. The kiss broke every rule, but felt like the truth. His hand moved to her waist. Her fingers tangled in his shirt, and for a moment it didn't matter who they were when he pulled away. His eyes were softer than she'd ever seen them. "This is going to complicate everything," he murmured. "It already has," she whispered. They stood there in the quiet, rain-washed glow of the office, neither knowing what to do next. Lucas straightened, finally his voice returning to its steady professional calm. "We'll finish the revisions tomorrow. Get some rest, Emma." She nodded, unable to speak as he turned to leave, but at the doorway he paused, his back to her, and said in a tone that sounded almost like a promise, "This stays between us, Emma, not because I'm ashamed, but because the world doesn't understand what happens when two people create something powerful together." And then he was gone, leaving her standing alone, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, her lips still trembling from his touch. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the storm outside had only just begun. The next morning, the city was alive with noise, taxis, horns, and the rush of people chasing dreams through grey streets. But inside Sterling Creative, the air felt heavier than usual. Emma tried to act normal. She wore her hair in a tight bun and kept her head down, pretending the night before hadn't happened, pretending Lucas's lips hadn't erased every boundary she'd promised to keep. She told herself she could still be professional. She told herself she wouldn't break again, but pretending only worked until she saw him. Lucas walked into the morning meeting, calm, composed, as if nothing in the world could shake him. He spoke to the team about the Horizon Cafe pitch, his voice steady, eyes sharp. But when he looked at her for a fraction, of a second, she saw it. The spark that shouldn't exist between a boss and his employee, the spark that could burn them both alive after the meeting. Mia cornered her in the hallway, her voice low and teasing. "You're acting weird and he's acting too normal. Care to explain?" Emma tried to laugh. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't," Maya whispered, "but be careful." The last assistant who got too close to Lucas ended up heartbroken and unemployed. Emma froze. "What do you mean?" Mia's expression softened. "I'm not saying he's cruel. I'm saying he's complicated." The words stuck with her all day. Lucas was complicated, brilliant, magnetic, and dangerous to everything she'd built for herself. But that night, as the rain cleared, the real storm began. Sterling Creative was hosting a major event, the unveiling of the Horizon Cafe campaign. The entire industry was watching. The glass rooftop sparkled with lights, cameras, and chatter. Emma stood near the back of the room, clutching her champagne, her hands shaking. Lucas was at the center, surrounded by clients and executives, looking every bit the confident, creative genius she'd fallen for when his gaze found hers across the room. It was like a current snapped between them. She looked away too fast, but Jake, her ex, had already noticed Emma. His voice slid into her ear, smooth and smug. "Didn't expect to see you here." She turned stiffly. "What do you want?" "Just wanted to congratulate you," he said, raising his glass. "Seems you're doing well. I hear you've got a powerful mentor." He nodded toward Lucas, the implication dripping with poison. Emma's stomach twisted. "You don't know what you're talking about." Jake smirked. "Oh, I think I do. Rumor is the great Lucas Bennett has a thing for his employees. Everyone loves a scandal." Right before she could respond, Lucas appeared beside her, his voice calm but cold. "Something wrong, Miss Sullivan?" Jake's confidence faltered under Lucas's stare. "No, not at all, just catching up." Lucas's eyes didn't move from him. "Then perhaps you should do that elsewhere," he said quietly. Jake muttered something under his breath and disappeared into the crowd. Lucas turned to her, lowering his voice. "You okay?" Emma nodded, even though she wasn't. "Thank you for that. You don't owe me thanks. I just don't like seeing you hurt." She looked up at him, the room fading, the air around them tightening. He reached for her hand under the tablecloth between them. No one could see, but she could feel the heat of his touch. They barely had time to breathe before the presentation began. Lucas introduced the campaign, his voice commanding, but every word felt personal when he handed the microphone to her. The spotlight hit like fire. She hesitated, then spoke from the heart, about connection, about finding meaning in moments of chaos. The crowd erupted in applause. When it ended, Lucas looked at her with something close to pride, maybe love. After the event, they found themselves alone. In the quiet hallway overlooking the city, she could still hear the echo of clapping behind them. He smiled. "You were incredible tonight." She shook her head. "You're the reason any of this worked." He stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. "That's not true, Emma. You're the reason I'm standing here at all." Her breath hitched. "Lucas, don't." He reached out his hand, tracing the edge of her jaw. "Why not? Because it's wrong, because it's reckless, because I can't stop thinking about you." Said the words, almost a whisper. She closed her eyes, trying to breathe. "You'll ruin everything." He smiled faintly. Maybe some things are meant to be ruined before she could stop him. He kissed her again, deeper, fiercer than before. This time there was no confusion. No pretending, only the truth of how much they wanted each other. When they finally broke apart, she could barely stand. "What now?" she whispered. "Now, we stop pretending," he said softly. She stared at him, trembling. "This could destroy us." Lucas nodded. "Maybe, but if we keep running from it, we'll destroy ourselves first." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then from somewhere down the hall, the sound of footsteps echoed. Someone was coming. They stepped apart too late. Mia appeared, freezing mid-step, her eyes wide. She looked from Lucas to Emma and back again, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh my God!" And that was how their secret stopped being a secret. The next morning, the office felt colder, even though the sun blazed outside. The walls of glass reflected light, but inside everything was shadows. Emma barely slept, her mind spinning with the memory of Lucas's kiss and Mia's shocked face. It had been reckless, dangerous, and now it was out. She couldn't undo it. She couldn't hide it. When she entered, sterling creative whispers followed her like smoke. Someone must have seen something. Maybe Mia had talked. Maybe the tension between her and Lucas had finally become too visible. The receptionist smiled too carefully. The designers stopped talking when she passed by, and even the interns glanced up from their desks with wide, curious eyes. By noon, an email arrived from Hire requesting a meeting. She felt her stomach twist into knots. Lucas wasn't in his office. The blinds were drawn. His assistant said he'd been in meetings all morning with the senior partners, and he didn't look happy. Emma walked into the HR room, where a man in a grey suit and the director of operations waited, both wearing polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They spoke in measured tones about company policy, professionalism, and public image. Someone had leaked a photo of Lucas and Emma in the hallway. The one moment before Mia had walked in the picture was grainy but unmistakable. "Board is aware," the man said quietly. "Until we complete our review, we're placing you on temporary leave." Effective immediately, her throat closed. She tried to explain that nothing inappropriate had happened, that the rumors were false. But their expressions didn't change. "It's standard procedure, Miss Sullivan. We appreciate your cooperation." She packed her things in silence. The office that had once felt like a dream now looked unfamiliar, empty without the energy that had fueled her ambition. She avoided everyone's eyes, but before she could leave the building, the elevator doors opened and Lucas stepped out. His face hard, jaw set, eyes dark with fury. "Emma," he said sharply, "come with me." His tone left no room for argument. She followed him into his office, where he closed the door and turned to face her. "I just heard," he said, "you're on leave because of me." She tried to steady her voice. "It's not your fault, Lucas." "Yes, it is," he snapped. "This is my company, my name. If anyone should face suspension, it's me. Don't." He was pacing now, hands clenched. "We were careful, Emma. Someone wanted this to get out. Someone wanted to destroy you and use me to do it." She frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he stopped and exhaled slowly, "that this isn't just gossip. There's timing, there's intent." Knock interrupted them. It was Mia, her eyes wide, her phone in her hand. "You need to see this," she said, and played a video, a news alert flashing across the screen, Sterling Creative under investigation for workplace misconduct. Anonymous sources claim CEO Lucas Bennett used his position to promote a romantic partner. Emma's face appeared blurred in the footage. But the story was clear. The internet was already devouring it, Emma felt. Her knees weaken. Lucas cursed under his breath. "Who leaked this?" Maya said softly. "I think I know." She handed them a printed screenshot from an anonymous tip line. The account traced back to someone familiar. "Jake," Emma whispered, her ex-Lucas's face went pale. "That bastard." She whispered, "How could he even know?" "Because he was there," Lucas said quietly. "He was at the event. Remember the rooftop?" His eyes burned with realization. He must have seen us and sold the story. The next hours were chaos. Phone calls, statements, lawyers. Lucas refused to let Emma take the blame. He faced the board himself, defending her professionalism and their work together, but the damage was done. The media storm grew louder, and the agency's reputation began to crack. That night, Emma sat alone in her apartment, the city lights blurring through tears. Everything she'd worked for was slipping away. A knock came at her door. Lucas stood there. Rain soaked his shirt, clinging to his chest. His eyes full of pain and determination. "I'm not letting them destroy you," he said. "I'll fix this." How she whispered, "By walking away from everything I built. If that's what it takes." He meant it. She could see it in his eyes, the weight of the empire he was ready to burn. Just to protect her. "Don't do this, Lucas, please," she said. "If you give up your career because of me, you'll hate me someday." He shook his head. "I'll hate myself if I let them take you down for something that isn't wrong, Emma. I don't regret what we did. I only regret not being braver sooner." She reached for his hand, tears spilling over. "You can't fight the whole world." He looked at her, his voice breaking. "Maybe not, but I can fight for you." Outside, thunder cracked again, like fate echoing their hearts. As he pulled her into his arms, she knew everything was about to change. Their world was collapsing, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid anymore. Sometimes love didn't destroy careers. Sometimes it destroyed the lies people built. Around them, the next morning, headlines exploded. Lucas Bennett resigns from Sterling Creative effective. Immediately, the company's statement praised his leadership. But the truth was simpler. He had chosen her over everything, and the world would never see it coming. Emma woke to the sound of her phone buzzing endlessly. News alerts, social media posts, emails, all saying the same thing. Lucas Bennett, the genius behind Sterling Creative, had resigned. Effective immediately, The city was talking. The industry was on fire. She sat up still, trying to understand what that meant for her. For them, Lucas had actually done it. He had burned down his empire. She stared out the window as the morning light filled her apartment, her heart a mix of awe. Fear and guilt, she wanted to call him, but she didn't know what to say. Would he regret it? Would he blame her? Or worse, would he disappear completely hours later? There was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Mia, her face pale, holding a newspaper. "You need to see this," she whispered on the front page. Was a photo of Lucas walking out of Sterling Creative, surrounded by cameras, his head held high, his expression unreadable, but the headline beneath it froze Emma to the core. Lucas Bennett under. Investigation for corporate sabotage. Emma's breath caught. What is this supposed to mean? Maya lowered her voice. Someone leaked financial documents showing that Lucas diverted company funds to an unknown account. They're saying he used it to cover his resignation costs, or worse, to fund personal projects. It's everywhere. Emma shook her head. No, that can't be right. Lucas would never. The doorbell rang again this time. It wasn't Maya. It was two men in dark suits. One held a badge. Federal Business. Fraud Division, are you Emma Sullivan? Yes, she whispered. We have some questions about Mr. Lucas Bennett and your professional relationship. They asked about the Horizon campaign, about the meetings, about her connection to Lucas. Every answer she gave felt like a trap when they finally left. Her hands were shaking. Maya sat beside her, whispering, "This isn't random. Someone is doing this on purpose. First the scandal, now this. Someone wants him destroyed." Emma's mind spun back to Jake, her ex, the man who had leaked their relationship. But he couldn't have access to corporate files unless someone bigger was helping him, someone inside Sterling Creative by evening. She couldn't take it anymore. She needed to see Lucas. She called his number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again until finally he answered, his voice rough, tired. "Meet me," she said. "Please, tell me what's happening." He hesitated, then said quietly, "Rooftop of the Hilton, 10 p.m. When she arrived, the city glittered below like a secret. He stood there, leaning against the railing, his hair damp from the drizzle, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. He looked like a man who had lost everything but refused to break. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "I had to," she whispered. "What's going on, Lucas? They're saying you stole money." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "They're saying a lot of things, none of them true. But truth doesn't matter when the right people want you gone," who she demanded. "Who's behind this?" He hesitated, then met her eyes. "My brother Ethan." She blinked, confused. "You never said you had a brother." "We haven't spoken in years," he said. "Our family owned part of Sterling Creative when our parents died. He took his inheritance and tried to buy me out when I refused. He swore he'd destroy me. Looks like he kept his promise." Emma stared at him, her heart pounding. "Lucas, you can't just let him win. There must be proof, something to clear your name." His jaw tightened. "Maybe, but finding it means dragging you deeper into this, and I won't do that. You already lost your job because of me. I don't care," she said fiercely. "I'm not letting you go down for something you didn't do." He smiled faintly. "You're stubborn, you remind me of myself before all this turned ugly." The sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Lucas's body stiffened. He turned quickly, pulling Emma behind him. A shadow moved through the rooftop entrance. Two men in suits stepped out. One held a camera. The other, a voice recorder, Mr. Bennett. "A few questions about the allegations. Care to comment?" Lucas's eyes darkened. "This isn't the time, gentlemen," but Emma could see something in their movements. They weren't just reporters, they were watching her. Too, recording every expression. She grabbed Lucas's hand and whispered, "We have to go now." They ran down the stairwell into the rain, the city lights blurring as thunder cracked above them. He opened the car door for her. "Get in." She hesitated. "Lucas, where are we going to find the proof?" he said, voice low, to end this, once and for all, as the car sped into the night. She looked at him. The man she'd kissed by mistake, the man who had given up everything for her, and now was risking what little He had left something inside her, shifted from fear to resolve. She would fight beside him no matter how dangerous it became. Outside lightning flashed, illuminating his face, determination and pain mixed in his eyes. Emma realized this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about truth, power, and redemption, and whoever had started this war was about to learn that Lucas Bennett didn't lose without a fight. The city never slept, but that night it felt like it was holding its breath, rain-washed. The streets in silver as Emma sat in Lucas's car, her hands trembling against her knees. They drove in silence for miles, neither speaking, both lost in thoughts that felt heavier than words. When Lucas finally stopped, it wasn't at his apartment or any place familiar. It was an old warehouse by the East River, hidden behind a row of abandoned delivery trucks. Emma looked around, uneasy. "Lucas, what is this?" He turned off the engine and glanced at her. "This is where the truth lives," he said quietly. "Years ago, my brother and I started Sterling Creative together before it became a global empire. Everything was stored here. Files, contracts, old drives. This place holds everything he never wanted anyone to find. Inside the warehouse, the air smelled of dust and oil." Lucas led her through rows of metal shelves toward a small office in the back. He opened a safe behind a cracked painting. Pulling out several hard drives and documents, he placed them on the table, his hands steady, but his eyes wild. "I kept backups of every financial report from the last 5 years. If Ethan forged numbers, if he planted evidence, this will prove it." Emma watched him work the glow of the laptop screen. Lighting his face, he typed with fierce focus, tracing money. Trails, cross-checking data lines. She could see exhaustion in the slump of his shoulders, but also determination. A fire that wouldn't die after hours of searching. He froze, his voice barely above a whisper. "Found it." Emma leaned closer. The screen showed bank transactions with Ethan's name linked to offshore accounts. "He used my identity to move funds." Lucas said, his jaw tightening. "This was his plan all along. He set me up months ago." She felt a rush of hope. "Then what do we do now?" "We leak it." Lucas said, "We show the world who really did this." She hesitated. "But if we go public, won't they come after you?" He smiled faintly. "They already are. Before they could act." A noise echoed through the warehouse, footsteps, soft but deliberate. Lucas snapped the laptop shut, his voice low. "We're not alone." The lights flickered, and for a moment everything went black. Emma's heart pounded. Lucas took her hand and pulled her behind a row of crates. "Stay quiet," he whispered. 2 figures entered, flashlights. Slicing through the dark, they moved, slowly searching. One of them spoke, called the boss. "They're here." Lucas tightened his grip on Emma's hand and whispered, "Run." They broke into a sprint, dodging between shadows, the sound of footsteps following. Close behind, Lucas led her to a side door, shoved it open, and they burst into the rain again. They ran until they reached a bridge, breathless, soaked and shaking. Lucas stopped, leaning against the railing, his voice rough. "I told you Ethan wouldn't stop until everything was gone." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "What if he doesn't want just your company? What if he wants to ruin your name forever?" Lucas nodded. "That's exactly what he wants, but I'm not giving him the satisfaction." Her chest ached, seeing the pain in his eyes. He had built everything with passion, and now his own blood wanted to destroy it. "Lucas, you can't fight this alone," she said quietly. "I'm with you." He turned to her, rain dripping from his hair. His gaze fierce. "You shouldn't be," he whispered. "You've already lost too much because of me." She stepped closer. "Then why does it still feel like it's worth it?" The moment stretched between them. Thunder rolled above, and he pulled her close. The kiss was desperate, soaked with fear and fire, both of them knowing the world might end tomorrow. But tonight they were still standing. When they finally broke apart, Lucas whispered, "I'll finish this once and for all. Tomorrow morning we go to the press." She nodded, but deep down a sense of dread crawled through her chest, as if something worse was still waiting in the dark. The next morning, headlines exploded again. but not the ones they expected. Lucas Bennett missing, last seen leaving the East River. Warehouse? Emma stared at the screen in disbelief, her coffee slipping from her hand, shattering against the floor. The room spun around her as one thought burned through her mind. She wasn't just fighting for love anymore, she was fighting to bring him back. Emma's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, friends, even strangers wanted answers, but she had none. Lucas was gone, vanished like a shadow in the rain. The police claimed he had fled the city, but Emma didn't believe it. Not for a second. Lucas wasn't a coward. He would never run from the truth or from her. She sat in her apartment staring at the photo of them from the company event, her fingers trembling against the glass. He had promised to meet the press that morning. He had promised to end this, and now the world believed he had disappeared to escape guilt. The storm outside matched the one inside her heart. Lightning cracked across the skyline as she replayed every moment of that night at the warehouse, every sound, every face. She remembered the two men who had followed them. One had spoken on the phone call, the boss, "They're here." And suddenly, she knew this wasn't random, this was planned. Ethan had taken him. She could feel it like an instinct burning in her chest. By evening, she was at the police station asking questions that no one wanted to answer. The officer looked bored. "Ma'am, we have no evidence of foul play." Mr. Bennett left willingly. His car was found near the bridge. She slammed her hand on the counter. "That doesn't mean anything. His laptop was gone. His files too. He's been set up." The officer sighed. "Miss Sullivan, we'll inform you if we find anything, but right now he's considered missing, not kidnapped," when she walked out into the cold night. Her phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking for him, or you'll end up next." Her heart froze. The message was followed by a photo. It showed Lucas unconscious, tied to a chair, in a dimly lit room, bruised but alive. Emma gasped, tears burning her eyes. She looked around, but the street was empty. Whoever sent that message was watching her. She ran home, locking the door, every window shaking in the wind. She tried to think who could help her, and then she remembered Mia, the only person she could still trust. Mia arrived 20 minutes later, pale and breathless after seeing the message. She whispered, "My God, this is real. We need to find where that picture was taken." Emma nodded, her voice shaking, the reflection in his eyes. "In the photo there's something, maybe a logo on the wall." Maya zoomed in, enhancing the image until the letters came into focus. "ECB Warehouses, Brooklyn, that's Ethan's company," she said softly. Without thinking, Emma grabbed her coat. Maya tried to stop her. "Please, you can't go there alone." But Emma was already running, her mind made up. She called a cab, and within half an hour she stood in front of a row of abandoned buildings by the docks, the same place Lucas had once called their first office. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pushed open a rusted door. The smell of damp and dust hit her immediately inside. It was dark, silent, too silent. She moved carefully, flashlight shaking in her hand. Voice echoed behind her, "You never should have come here." Ethan stepped out of the shadows, his smile cold and deliberate. "I was hoping Lucas would keep his little secret safe, but you had to dig, didn't you?" She glared. "Where is he?" Ethan shrugged, "Alive for now. But you've ruined my patience." He was supposed to disappear quietly, not become a headline. Emma's voice broke. "You did all this to him, to your own brother." He laughed. "Blood doesn't mean loyalty, my dear, and Lucas took everything that should have been mine." She moved toward him, but two men appeared blocking her path. Ethan nodded at them. "Finish it." The sound of metal scraping echoed through the room before they could grab her. A crash thundered from above. Lucas burst through a side door, battered but alive, swinging a metal rod. He hit one of the men hard, sending him sprawling. He turned to the other. "Stay away from her." Emma's breath caught. He was limping, bleeding, but fierce, his eyes full of fire. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. "You should have stayed gone." Lucas smiled coldly. "I tried, but she wouldn't let me." The brothers collided, the fight brutal, raw. The sounds of fists and fury filled the warehouse. Emma tried to intervene, but Lucas shouted, "Run, Emma, run!" She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you," but he pushed her back. The struggle ended. When Ethan lunged with a knife, Lucas dodged it, sending his brother crashing into a stack of crates that collapsed in a cloud of dust. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mia had called the police. They burst in moments. Later, dragging Ethan away, Lucas collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Emma rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. He smiled weakly. "You really don't listen, do you?" She laughed through tears. Never outside the dawn was breaking, painting the city. In gold, as they stepped into the open air, Lucas took her hand, his grip trembling. "But sure, I thought I lost everything," he whispered. "But I still have you." She pressed her forehead against his. "You have the truth too. And this time, we're going to use it." But as they walked toward the waiting ambulance, neither of them noticed the black car, parked down the street engine, running a silhouette inside, watching them with cold, steady eyes. The fight might have ended, but the war was far from over. The hospital room smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain. Emma sat beside Lucas, watching the monitor beep steadily, his face pale but peaceful. He had been unconscious for hours since the fight at the warehouse. The doctors said he'd lost blood, but would recover. She hadn't left his side once the city outside was finally quiet, but inside her heart, nothing felt settled. She had seen the shadowy car that followed them that morning. She knew this wasn't over. Ethan might be in custody, but powerful men didn't fall alone. They dragged their monsters down with them. When Lucas finally stirred, his fingers brushed hers, his voice rough. "I thought you'd be gone by now." She smiled through tears. "And leave you alone with hospital pudding." "Not a chance." He managed a weak laugh, his eyes softening. "You saved me again." Emma shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just refused to give up on you." Before she could say more, the door opened. Mia stepped in, her face pale, her phone clutched tightly. You need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. She handed Lucas the screen. The headline glared back at them. Sterling creative faces. "Major collapse, investors pull out following fraud scandal." Lucas's expression hardened. Ethan's plan worked. Even from behind, Emma frowned. "We have the evidence. We can prove it was him." Lucas nodded slowly. "Maybe. But there's something bigger here. Look at the timestamp. Those accounts didn't stop after Ethan's arrest. Someone else kept the money." Moving, she froze. "You mean he wasn't working alone?" Lucas's eyes darkened. "No, he wasn't. There's someone else, someone powerful who used Ethan as a pawn before they could react." The lights flickered. The door creaked open again. A tall man in a black coat entered, flanked by 2 security guards. Emma recognized him instantly. Margaret Carlton's associate, one of the board members from Sterling. His voice smooth, calm. "Mr. Bennett, Miss Sullivan, good to see you." "Alive." Lucas's tone turned. "To ice. What do you want?" The man smiled. "The same thing Ethan wanted. Control Sterling. Creative belongs to us now." Lucas straightened, despite his pain. "You won't get it. Not while I'm breathing." The man's smirk widened. "Then I suppose that's the problem." One of the guards moved toward Lucas. Emma stepped in front of him, eyes blazing. "You'll have to go through me first." The man tilted his head, amused, brave but foolish. Suddenly the door burst open again. Mia had triggered the hospital. Alarm lights flashing, footsteps echoing down the hall. The man cursed, retreating with his guards, but not before whispering, "You can't hide forever, Bennett." When they were gone, Emma turned to Lucas, trembling. "We need to leave now. They'll come back." Lucas nodded, already pulling off his IV. They escaped through the back entrance, slipping into the cold night. The streets of New York stretched endlessly ahead of them, lit by red and blue flashes from distant sirens. They ducked into an alley, catching their breath. Lucas looked at her. "We have one chance, the backup drive from the warehouse. It has everything, every transaction, every name. If we release it, the whole network collapses." Emma met his eyes. Then, let's end this together. They went to her apartment, the city quiet, except for the whisper of the wind. Lucas set up the laptop, inserting the drive. The screen flickered to life. Rows of files, names, companies, even government contracts. The corruption went deeper than either of them imagined. Lucas's hands shook as he prepared the upload. "Once this is out there, there's no going back," he said softly. She placed her hand over his, "Then let the world see who they really are." He pressed, "Enter the file," uploaded, spreading across encrypted networks to journalists, law firms, and watchdogs. Within minutes, news alerts began flooding in truth, finally breaking through years of lies. Emma exhaled a shaky breath. "It's done." Lucas leaned back, exhausted but smiling. "You just helped bring down an empire?" She smiled faintly. "No, we built a new one on honesty." The next morning, the headlines changed. Sterling creative corruption exposed billionaire brothers involved in years of fraud. Government launches full investigation. Lucas's name was cleared. The world that once turned its back now called him a hero, but for him, none of that mattered. What mattered was the woman beside him who had believed in him when no one else did. Weeks later, as spring sunlight warmed the city, they walked hand in hand through Central Park. He had started a small creative studio. Again, no shareholders, no politics, just art and people who cared. Emma worked beside him, not as an employee, but as an equal partner. Their first campaign launched under the name Horizon Reborn, a symbol of second chances. As they watched the unveiling billboard light up across the skyline, Lucas turned to her, his voice soft. "Remember the first night we met the rooftop?" She smiled. "How could I forget? You were the stranger I kissed to make my ex jealous." And now he grinned. "Now I'm the man who can't imagine a world without you." She leaned in close, whispering, "Maybe some mistakes are just the universe getting impatient." The city glowed around them, laughter, and carried on the wind. The world moved on, but their story remained proof that love wasn't weakness. It was the only thing powerful enough to survive corruption, betrayal, and fear. Emma looked at him, eyes bright, and said quietly, "So what now?" Lucas took her hand and smiled. "Now we start our own horizon forever." And as the lights of New York shimmered against the night sky, they kissed again, not out of impulse or revenge, but out of everything they had fought for: love, truth, and the courage to begin again.